In this episode, we talk about the Indian film industry trying to cash in on the dominant political narratives in the country. We also talk about the exit of two BJP leaders in West Bengal. But first, we talk about simultaneous polls, or the One Nation, One Election project. Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. For the past decade, there has been a lot of talk about simultaneous polls. The idea has been amplified by Prime Minister Narendra Modi ever since he came to power in 2014. And the BJP has long argued that one way to make elections fair is to hold them together. One nation, one election has been the pitch. When we spoke to Indian Express's Apurva Vishwanath, she explained the concept to us.
So we have about 545 Lok Sabha seats, which means elections happen in that many Lok Sabha segments. About 4,123 state assemblies, which are of course spread over all the states. So different states go to polls at different intervals. And there are about an estimated 2.5 lakh panchayat and municipality elections. So the idea that the Narendra Modi government is floating is to have all these three elections simultaneously at all three levels, which means national elections, assembly elections, and your local elections all happen at the same time, where there is one voter list. So when a voter comes in to vote, he votes for all three levels of the government.
Now, while this idea has raised concerns, the government argues that because of the way things are right now, political parties are always in election mode, and which comes in the way of actual governance.
So expenditure and also management of time, and to make sure resources always don't go into election. These are the big issues that the BJP brings up to argue that there must be simultaneous polls.
Now, back in September 2023, the One Nation, One Election Committee, headed by former President Ramnath Kovind, was set up by the Law Ministry. The committee was put in charge of suggesting ways to hold simultaneous elections, and it is actually expected to come out with its report very soon. But before this idea can be implemented, a number of constitutional and logistical hurdles will have to be ironed out. And it is in this regard that the Law Commission of India last month made a series of recommendations. In this segment, we speak to Apurva, who broke the story for the paper about what the commission recommended. Apurva, so first tell us the kind of challenges that have been flagged over time by experts, including those from the Election Commission, in trying to make simultaneous polls possible.
So, of course, we talked about what machinery we would need to have elections at 4 levels simultaneously. That is at the center, the state assemblies, municipalities and panchayats, right? So this would be the number of, say, for example, EVM machines you would need, or central forces that would need to be deployed in various places, or the creation of a common voter list. These are all logistical nightmares. Of course, these are all issues, and how you overcome those is one big challenge. But the other thing is something that we've seen happen in the past, because when we started out, as in the first Lok Sabha elections happened in India, that was in a sense a simultaneous election. You had Lok Sabha and the state assemblies go to polls together. Why we didn't have that later on is because some governments fell midway. Right? Say president's rule was imposed somewhere, say a government collapsed somewhere. So when this happened, you couldn't have all elections synced together every single time. So that is why we have different states going to polls at different times now. So how do you overcome that situation? How do you avoid that situation?
Right, one imagines it's not as easy as simply pressing the reset button.
Yes, of course. Even if you hit the reset button and you go back to simultaneous polls, there is no way you can guarantee that, some state government will not fall. For example, in this election cycle itself, you could have a hung assembly, that no party is in a position to form the government. So what happens in that case?
Yeah, you can't keep pressing that reset button.
Yeah, which means some elections will happen outside the cycle. So how do you avoid that? That was the big gaping question when it came to simultaneous polls that we were talking about, for which now the 22nd Law Commission has come up with a framework on how to deal with that.
Okay, so tell us, how does the Law Commission, which makes recommendations to the government, propose to deal with this hung assembly problem?
So the Law Commission has, say, a twofold approach. So the Law Commission has not yet formally submitted its report to the government. We know that they have made detailed presentations before the high-level COVID panel, which is also looking into simultaneous polls. So one of the suggestions that the Law Commission is likely to make in its report is this, that they have a twofold approach to deal with, what happens when governments fall midway. So, say, for example, a state assembly is in session and there is a no confidence motion against the chief minister and the government has fallen. So, what happens in that case? There is, say, 2 years left for the next cycle of simultaneous polls. So, the Law Commission is suggesting that you first have what it calls a unity government, which is an all-party government. So how that works is an entirely different question because, drawing consensus between warring political parties like the opposition and the party which was in power, which has just, fallen. So all of these things together, it's a big task. So, but the first approach that the Law Commission suggests is having this unity all-party government. And when that doesn't work, then to sort of hold elections only for the remainder period, say only for 2 years. This is, of course, a lot of expenditure for holding power for a very short period of time. So, both these issues seem very difficult to implement, but these are the suggestions that the Law Commission has to deal with for the time being. They also, use the words, it's a stopgap measure till the next simultaneous cycle happens.
And Apurva, the Constitution also mentions certain provisions when it comes to how elections are supposed to be conducted. So how does the Law Commission propose to deal with that?
So even for this idea to be implemented, you need to make changes in the Constitution because we have constitutional provisions which clearly say that the term of an assembly will be 5 years, right? So if you are going to have an election where the term of the assembly will be a fixed period, which is less than 5 years, whatever it is, 1 year or 2 years, or even 6 months in some cases, right? So in that case, you will have to make amends to the Constitution. So the Law Commission suggestions include bringing in an entire chapter, a new chapter on simultaneous elections. Right now, we have Chapter 15 of the Constitution, elections, and amongst other things, it says that all elections in India will be held on the basis of adult suffrage, which means 18 and above can vote irrespective of caste, creed, gender, religion, etc., right? So this chapter on elections, the Law Commission is suggesting be supplemented with, say, a chapter 15A, for example, which would deal with simultaneous polls. So like we discussed, one is about the term of the House when elections are conducted midway. The other is, of course, right now, also a lot of assembly elections are in different phases, right? So all of them would not come to an end at the same time. So what the Law Commission is suggesting is you try and synchronize these in the next 5 years and then by 2029 have all elections in one cycle. But even then there could be a lag, say, of 3 to 5 months or 6 months or more in some cases. Some assembly elections may not sync with the national elections even by 2029. So in that case, what can you do? Because the Constitution again specifically states that there is a 5-year term for an assembly. You can't extend that, not even by a day. So that needs a constitutional amendment. That is what the Law Commission is likely to suggest to the government.
And does the Law Commission say anything about there being a common voter list for these polls? Because that is also something that has been proposed in the past.
So the common electoral roll has been a very contentious issue. It has been something that's on the BJP poll promises as well, which means you have a same voter list for all elections, the state, centre and panchayat elections. Right now, we don't have a common voter list in all states. For the Lok Sabha elections, there is one voter list. And for this panchayat and assembly elections, some states have their own voter list. This is because you have a state election commission as well. And the state election commission is entrusted with conducting elections at the state level, whereas the election commission at the center, right? So the election commission conducts the elections at the national level as well as through the offices of the vice president and president also. So that is something that the Law Commission says can also be done through a constitution amendment. This chapter we discussed, a new chapter 15A in the Constitution that the Law Commission suggested adding. There you basically have 3 provisions. 1, to talk about simultaneous polls, make it a constitutional mandate. 2 is to prepare a common voter list. And the 3rd would be to discuss these modalities about extending or curtailing the term of a house as it is required for holding an election together.
And Apurva, in the end, talk about the kind of concerns that the opposition parties have raised in the past about this idea.
So while the YSRCP in Andhra Pradesh, the Telugu Desam Party in Andhra Pradesh, Naveen Patnaik's Biju Janata Dal, these parties have supported the idea of simultaneous polls in principle. The Congress, the DMK, the left have been staunch opposers of this idea. So one, of course, is for regional parties, like the DMK argues that the issues are different for different election. For a Lok Sabha election, for example, the issues could be national security, foreign relations, if there is a border dispute between India and Pakistan. These all are national issues, right? Which only the center can look at. But whereas for the state elections, that the focus should be completely different. Also for, say, the local elections, your municipality election, the focus would be on whether, your roads are well laid, whether there is adequate civic infrastructure. These become the issues. But when you have all three elections clubbed together, that sort of gets lost. And the voter doesn't have the flexibility to vote according to what works for her and what is important for the voter. The other concern that data tells us is that when a state assembly election is held along with the Lok Sabha election, regional parties do not up their vote share, or the voter turnout is better, but the vote goes to the national party that is winning the Lok Sabha polls. The only party that sort of ducked this factor is the Biju Janata Dal in Odisha. When the elections happen along with the Lok Sabha, Naveen Patnaik still managed. So there is a concern that regional parties with local mandates sort of lose out when they are pitted against a national election.
And next we talk about the film industry. Just ahead of the crucial Lok Sabha polls, when political developments, controversies and discourse are dominating news cycles, the Indian film industry has been trying to capitalize on the prevailing national mood with a series of politically themed releases. Indian Express's Vidhatri Rao recently looked at these films and wrote about them for the paper.
So the idea was to just look at all of the films that are coming out in 2024, which is a crucial election year, that have references to political themes, ideas, historical events that play out in current discourse, or just talk about things that we are talking about today. And some of these have direct political references, some don't. But one that has a very direct political reference and talks about an event that is very much part of our conversations today is Article 370. Now, this movie came out on February 23rd. Interestingly, this was 3 days after Prime Minister's visit to Jammu. Now, again, a crucial visit after the Supreme Court ruled on the abrogation of Article 370. And he was there at a rally and he started talking about hearing about a certain film on TV called Article 370. And he said that this film would show the right thing about the events that preceded Article 370.
सुना है शायद इसी हफ्ते ये 370 को लेकर के कोई फिल्म आने वाली है. मुझे पता नहीं है फिल्म कैसी है. मैंने कल ही कहीं किसी टीवी पे सुना कि ऐसी कोई 370 पे फिल्म आ रही है. अच्छा है, लोगों को सही जानकारी मिलने में काम आएगी.
Now, this was seen as a direct endorsement of the film by many, and after his speech, many of the film's cast and crew and production team, they all tweeted about it and spoke about it. And eventually, after the film came out, there was a lot of criticism of its selective portrayal of the events that preceded Article 370. And in fact, I saw the movie, and the movie has actors who resemble the Prime Minister, the Home Minister. It also has opposition leaders and prominent leaders from Kashmir as well.
And Vidhatri, have we seen this happen before when the Prime Minister has referred to a Bollywood film in a speech?
Actually, in fact, yes. So in 2019, also coincidentally an election year, big Lok Sabha election year, Prime Minister Modi was at an event in Mumbai related to the National Cinema Museum. And there were a lot of Bollywood stars in the audience. And he referenced that very popular dialogue from Uri, which is based on surgical strikes. He said, "How's the Josh?" And that also, again, went viral. Everybody spoke about it.
पुरानी पीढ़ी के लोग भी हैं और बिल्कुल नई पीढ़ी के लोग भी हैं. और इसलिए मेरे मन में एक सवाल है. How is the Josh?
So this isn't the first time. And interestingly, the team that worked on Kashmir Files also worked on Uri. So the director of Uri, his name is Aditya Dar. He produced the film, and Yami Gautam acted in Uri as well, and now she plays the titular role here as well.
Okay, so you mentioned Article 370, which is being released this year. What other movies this year have overt political themes?
So I would say Article 370 is the only movie that directly refers to like a contemporary event, and that is in recent memory. And we know that Article 370 abrogation has been a very long ideological project of the BJP. So that's a more direct reference. There are other films that refer to older events or historical figures. So for example, on March 15th, we have a biopic of Hindutva ideologue V.D. Savarkar coming out. Before that, in fact, we have a film called Bastar, a Naxal story coming out, which, according to the filmmakers, is about events in Chhattisgarh between 2007 and 2013, and doesn't directly reference what is happening right now. But the trailer has a reference to students from Jawaharlal Nehru University, and the trailer claims that these students are in or work in tandem with Naxalites. There are more movies in the works as well this year. So we have a film on the 2002 Gujarat riots, on the Godhra riots, and then we have a film titled Emergency, which is about the emergency, and it stars Kangana Ranaut. But again, this is not a one-off thing. It's not an anomaly. In 2019, we had The Accidental Prime Minister, which was about the Prime Minister. And last year, we saw Mission Mangal, which was about our Mars orbiter mission. We also saw a Vaccine War, which was about, again, the COVID vaccine and our efforts to control the pandemic. So there have been a lot of these films, polar otherwise, that have talked about events in contemporary political discourse.
Right, and when we talk about the Bastar movie, for example, you spoke to the producer Vipul Amrit Shah. What did he have to say about what the movie is trying to portray?
So Vipul Amrit Shah is interesting because the same team that's produced Bastar, a Naxal story, also produced the Kerala story, which had created a lot of controversy when it came out for its portrayal of women in Kerala allegedly being taken to ISIS camps after being married to Muslims and then being forced to convert, etc. Now, when I spoke to him, he said that the film was, again, showing truthfully the events that happened in those years, in those Naxal years, as he called it, showing the truth about Bastar. And he, again, also dismissed all sorts of links to the ruling party or any sort of messaging that they would be endorsing. He just said that his film focuses on what is right for India. And he said that if the ruling party had a similar sort of stand, it was their stand, but had nothing to do with his particular stand. And he, in fact, also said that when I asked him a question about JNU, because the film's trailer actively talks about students in JNU supporting the Naxalism movement and claims that they had celebrated the death of 74 Jawans who were killed by Naxals. And I asked him if that played into the popular narrative of students from JNU being left-leaning or anti-national, so to speak. He said that you cannot deny that there's an active lobby in JNU.
Okay, and besides these Hindi movies, you also write about a few Telugu movies that depict what's going on in Andhra Pradesh. So tell us about these movies and the context there.
So Andhra Pradesh is heading out for simultaneous assembly and Lok Sabha polls. And this is a state which has two very strong regional players, which is the YSRCP, which is headed by Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy, and the Telugu Desam Party, which is headed right now by Chandrababu Naidu. And this is also a very sort of robust film culture, which takes its film very seriously. So just this year, we've had 3 films that, in fact, like they don't talk about a political event or anything. They're part fictionalized, part satire, part real incidents on Jagan, on Naidu, on actor Pawan Kalyan, whose Janasena party has stitched up an alliance with TDP as well.
And do these movies show these parties in a favorable light?
Okay, so there was one film which Ram Gopal Verma interestingly made. It was called Vyuham. It got into a trouble. The release was postponed, but it was released finally on March 1st. And that film is entirely like, it's his take. It's his political commentary is what he calls it. So now that, I believe, is just like taking swings at everyone and is critical of most political leaders. But there was a film called Yatra, which released early in February, which was about CM Jagan's Odarpu Yatra. Odarpu in Telugu translates to a condolence. This was about the events that happened right after his father, Y.S. Rajshekar Reddy, who was a very popular chief minister of Andhra Pradesh, after he passed away and after Jagan took over the party. So he had gone on a yatra across the state to meet people who were mourning the loss of his father. And that is also widely believed to have catapulted him into power and built a base among people. This was his first public sort of outreach program. So that film very much like directly references that. And in fact, like in the trailer, you can see Sonia Gandhi. And you have to remember that this was, Jagan had formed the YSR Congress party and he had split up from the Congress. Sonia Gandhi actively trying to like sabotage his yatra. And then we have like a very sort of caricaturish portrayal of Naidu as well. So you see the film and you realize that it's overtly sort of like taking a side. Now, but I asked this question to the director of the film, whose name is Mahi Raghav. And he says that he sees no connection. And in fact, like the timing for him is just good marketing. He says that they've released the film in February just ahead of the elections because they think it'll do well. And for him, this is just in his own words, a dramatic story that has an emotional connect with people. And he says it's a story about a father-son relationship more than any sort of political intriguing drama or anything like that.
And Vidhatri, do these films have any similarities between them, apart from the fact that they depict political events and talk about the dominant political narratives?
I wouldn't say there's any one particular similarity, except that all of these films generate a lot of discourse each time they come out about whether they're propaganda, whether they're not propaganda. And the filmmakers also have like dismissed. So for example, when Article 370, the trailer was released, the Aditya Dar who produced the film, he was asked if this film was propaganda. Now he told, in fact, us in an interview that this film is a women-centric film and it highlights the truth about the incidents leading up to abrogation of Article 370. And he was in fact asked if this film is propaganda. And then he said that a party like BJP, which is so big in terms of its organizational strength, it didn't need a film like this.
And how do political parties react to these films if they find that they are in support of the ruling government or if they don't align with their political views?
So it's interesting. We have earlier examples of something like an Uri, where, again, the PM spoke about it. There were other films where there were tax exemptions by ruling governments. So there was that. That's sort of the direct endorsement that we can see. In terms of controversies, I think I can give you the example of Andhra Pradesh. So there was another film that I didn't speak about, which was called Rajdhani Files, which directly attacked a policy of CM Jagan Mohan Reddy. So CM Jagan had proposed the idea of setting up of 3 capitals in Andhra Pradesh. One was an administrative capital, one was a legislative capital, and one was an economic capital. And that proposal has been stuck in court over multiple issues and there's no clarity on it. So a film called Rajdhani Files very actively spoke about this policy, attacked it, and YSRC MLA went to court with it, requesting a stay on the film. Now, the film was stopped for a day, they stopped it from exhibiting for a day, but then I think it carried on. But otherwise, we've seen endorsements in terms of tax exemptions in the past. And in the past, a film like Kerala Story had generated a lot of controversy where a lot of political leaders in the opposition had hit out at the film over its factual inaccuracies and questioned it. In fact, Chief Minister of Kerala, who's Pinarayi Vijayan, he spoke about the film and he issued a statement condemning it, saying that it was playing into the larger Sangh-driven ideology of portraying Kerala a particular way. So there was that.
And in the end, we talk about Bengal. At a time when leaders from various states are defecting from the Congress and other opposition parties to join the BJP, which appears confident ahead of the Lok Sabha polls, this doesn't seem to be the case in Bengal. Over the past week, the Saffron party in the state has witnessed the resignation of an MP and an MLA. Indian Express's Shantanu Chowdhury, who reports on the state for the paper, tells us about them.
In the past few days, we've seen that BJP's MP from Jharkhand, Kunar Hembrom, written a letter to State BJP President Sukanta Majumdar expressing his desire not to be associated with the party anymore. So he has kind of quit the party ahead of the Lok Sabha polls. And days before that, we have seen that BJP's Ranaghat Dakshin MLA, Mukutmani Adhikari, also left the party and also joined the Trinamool Congress. So these are the 2 BJP leaders who have just left the party ahead of the Lok Sabha polls. And also the BJP has announced a list of its candidates for 20 seats in West Bengal. And among them, there are several names who have got their seats to retain their constituency. However, the John Barla, who is also a union minister, was not nominated from his Alipurduar constituency in North Bengal. As a result, he has, expressed his displeasure and also threatened to contest the election as an independent candidate. So these are the three leaders who have put the BJP in a tight spot in West Bengal at a time when they have set a target of winning 35 seats in West Bengal, and losing an MP before the elections is seen like a setback to the Saffron camp. And also its union minister expressing his desire to contest as an independent candidate also sends a very wrong message to the party rank and file.
And Shantanu, is the TMC, which has been facing a lot of heat because of the Sandesh Khali incident, taking advantage of this?
So the Trinamool Congress government in West Bengal has found itself at a tight spot following the large number of complaints that has emerged from the women in Sandesh Khali area. For the last 2 months, opposition has been targeting the state government for failing to provide safety and security to the women of the state, who have lodged complaints against the TMC leaders and who has been arrested by either the police or the CBI now. So therefore, the TMC was trying to find a way out from these, kind of situations, and getting the leaders from the BJP to the ruling party is seen like a one step that can give some major boost to the Trinamool Congress, saying that, the BJP is also losing power in West Bengal. However, at the same time, we haven't seen some major defections like a large number of BJP cadre or large number of BJP supporters joining the Trinamool Congress. So that we haven't seen yet. However, this defection of its leaders causes a concern for the BJP in West Bengal, because across the country the BJP is gaining strength and leaders from other parties are joining the BJP, and it is gaining a lot of strength ahead of the Lok Sabha polls. But the trend is somehow different in West Bengal. So therefore, the party has to think where it went wrong so that they can get the support of these leaders and arrest the defections further so that the Trinamool Congress doesn't get an upper hand in the elections.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.